there, and welcome to Nex-Tech University. Today we have our Tech Talk webinar here, and my name is Olga Detrixhe, and I have with me Nate Rohelder, who is our security specialist. So welcome, Nate. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And today we're going to talk about access control, right?
Yes.
Great. That's a great topic because I feel like it's been a hot topic. I feel like we've heard a lot of customers talk about it and inquire about it, but it's probably one of the topics that's not very well known. I feel like a lot of people don't have a good understanding of it. Do you see that as well?
Yeah, a lot of people don't really know what access control is. They hear the terminology, or they maybe have referred to it as a key card system or something like that. So hopefully today we'll give you a little bit more information on how the systems work and what access control means and how you could implement it into your business.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, well, so let's maybe start at the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about what access control is and how that differs from how people do business today?
Sure. Pretty much everybody uses access control in some form or factor today, and traditionally that's metal keys. So we use a metal key to get into our vehicle or into our home or our business. It's been around for ages and ages. Access control has been in locking doors. So since the start of the metal key, we've been using access control. It's just in an older format.
Gotcha. So really the term is not anything special. It's maybe more the transitioning from the metal keys to an electronic form of access control. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means and some of the benefits. So let's maybe start there and talk about why would you go away from keys? I mean, it's worked for so long. Why would you want to try to fix anything that's working fine?
Sure. Metal keys have been around, like we mentioned, for a long time. But they do have some drawbacks, and some of those drawbacks are that they can be easily duplicated. So we can go to the hardware store and have a new metal key recut. So really it takes the control out of the business owner's hands if an employee that's been issued a metal key goes and makes 5 copies, and now they have them scattered throughout different vehicles, or they've handed them off to another employee within the business. So there are some security risks with keys being duplicated.
Absolutely. And then I see you had put up a couple more there on our PowerPoint. And so tell us a little bit about rigid access control structure. What does that exactly mean?
Well, what we mean by that is that metal keys a lot of times are rigid in where they have access to. So a lot of times business owners will either create a master key, where that master key has access to all doors throughout the facility. Or we have to have a big metal keychain that has 50 keys on it to have the different access levels for maybe the cleaning crew or maintenance staff or IT that maybe needs to have access to certain areas. So it's pretty hard with metal keys to give that flexibility of having different access levels without having a keychain weighing it down.
And then really also tracking if you go with a different key for every door, who has the key, and are they, to your earlier point, are they employees switching between themselves, and are they, saying, oh, hey, I just need access for this tomorrow. Can you just lend me your key real quick? I'll give it back, and then you forget about it. Or you might even take keys off premises and, lose them at home or what have you, right?
It's really a logistical nightmare of keeping track of those keys, which one has access to which different doors, and keeping an audit trail is not possible with metal keys. So you don't really know who's used that metal key to come in or out of your business.
And you can use them 24/7, really. You don't have any track of when people use them, right?
Correct.
Absolutely. So really you can only go either everybody has access to everything, or it's a complete nightmare trying to restrict it. And there's really not a whole lot in between that you can do. Okay. So we talked a little bit about expensive, time-consuming to rekey facilities and keeping track of it whenever you do get to the point that you want it to maybe start fresh. And then we talked a little bit about the audit trail and the key sharing. Tell me a little bit about the push-button locks and the human error. So what are some of those factors?
So push button locks have started making their way in because they're convenient. So business owners have replaced cylindrical latch touches with a push button option, and it's convenient because you don't have to have the metal key. But they still have some drawbacks in that the code can be shared to other users. Yeah. You can still use it 24/7. There's really no time limitations of when that code can be used, and there still, in most cases, is not an audit trail option to keep track of who's been in or out.
Gotcha. So basically the push button, they're really just individual for that specific door, and you could even get the same fallacy as you have with the keys, to where if you put them on each doors, are you going to do one key for all? Are you going to do different keys? Are you going to keep track of the codes via a spreadsheet, or what do you do with it? Really the same problems we have with keys, right?
Yeah. The biggest thing with keys in mechanical doors is that a lot of times we don't provide the maintenance to those in the time frame that they need to be. So if we terminate employees, then we're not going back and getting those rekeyed in a timely manner, or the buttons or code replaced. So
yeah, and if you do, people start complaining that you're changing the code every week, right?
Yeah.
Which I get it. And then we also have the human error on there. I just want to touch on that real briefly. So I assume that just kind of means what it says, to where you could have people, they say they lock the door, but they forget. You get busy, you maybe need to rush out, you need to pick up your kid from daycare, things like that. Maybe you try to shut the door, you think it closed, but it didn't, and nobody knows. Am I on the right track?
Yep. Just like viruses on computers where people are clicking, it's actually the user that's your weakest link. And again, here in this, it's
Gotcha.
access control in your business, and the human error can be
a huge factor. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so keys are not very efficient and not very trackable, and it's an issue. So let's talk about a little bit what we can do. So let's talk about some of the benefits of electronic access control and how that differs from the keys.
So electronic access control is just taking the old style and creating it into and using new technology. And so with that, we would use software or an access control management software platform to control who has access to the building, when they have access, and where they have access to once they get into the building.
Oh, so you can track it 100% from every door? That is fantastic.
Yeah, so you can have a general employee that maybe only has access to your employee entrance door, but they don't have access to get into an IT room door.
And so you can also, you have that flexibility that we mentioned you don't have with the keys. You can actually specifically grant people just access to specific doors. Fantastic. Okay, cool.
So one of the things with that is it's one credential. So we can use a card, and that is your key to all doors on the system. The electronic system in the background is what's running and controlling, does this user have access to door 1 or door 2 or 3 or 500. So the systems can really scale to size anywhere from a single door application to hundreds of doors across multiple facilities, clear across the country. So it can be scaled to any size business.
Great. And then you also mentioned that it's a centralized system, right? So you're really keeping track of it from one platform and from one area versus, trying to kind of have different people responsible for different facilities and whoever is local and things like that.
Yeah, it really puts the power in the user's hand, whether you're the business owner in a small business that's keeping track of your users, or a bigger facility where you maybe have an HR staff that's doing that. So when you bring on a new employee, you onboard them, you activate a key or a credential for the system, and you assign them to user groups. And we'll talk a little bit about that.
So what if I then have an employee, you mentioned that it's flexible as far as the doors go. What if I have different groups that need access at different times? What if I have a cleaning crew and they only need in after hours? Do I have to have somebody stay and let them in or anything like that?
No, we can actually create those user groups and we can create time schedules. Time schedules can be defined for certain days of the week or times throughout the day in which that user has access to get into the facility.
Oh, okay. And so you can do that all ahead of time, and you don't have to have anybody there to let them in?
It's pre-programmed, and now we get to see in the audit trail side of the software, we can see exactly when that user's entered, when they've exited, or if we need to terminate an employee, we can go in and we can suspend that credential. So even if we don't get this credential, which is a few dollars back, we don't have to worry about that. We can easily delete it out of the system.
Great.
Or suspend that user.
Oh, that's fantastic. So basically you don't have to worry about the keys there. It might be out there somewhere in the ether and you have to change out the whole lock. You just basically change who has access to it.
Exactly.
That's great. I saw on here what's interesting is alarm features. Tell me a little bit about that.
So alarm features are kind of an added benefit of the system in that we can tell if a door's been propped open via a door position switch. You heard the system beep there. It's letting you know, or the user know, that, hey, this door has been opened without a valid card read. Or if the door has been propped open for, say, more than 5 minutes because somebody has put a rock to hold the door open, we can alert an admin group that, hey, this door is open and there's a security risk to your business.
Oh, wow. So it's really not just that you come in afterwards and notice, oh, hey, something happened to my business. You actually can get alerts and can react and potentially prevent things like a break-in or anything like that, or at least catch it while it's going on.
Yep.
That's fantastic. Another thing I saw on there that kind of caught my eye was lockdown. That's kind of a big deal right now, especially talking about schools and hospitals, security risks, government buildings. So tell me how an electronic access control system can help with organizations that when they have to craft lockdown policies and how they can help enforce them also.
Sure. It is becoming very popular for institutions such as schools or medical facilities to have systems put in place that they can easily lock down. So we think of active shooter situations or something that's going on outside of the facility that we may want to prevent somebody from coming in. So maybe the police department has been alerted of a situation that is near your business. We can easily go in with a click of a mouse and activate a lockdown. And that lockdown could lock all of your exterior doors from anybody gaining entry. It would still allow, if we want to let the user leave the facility so they can get out and be safe, but it can prevent anybody from coming in and doing harm to your staff or your students inside the facility. So
that's a huge value. I mean, that can really help out a lot with the administrative challenges of trying to come up with lockdown policies, and because again, to our earlier point, human error is usually the biggest factor there. So that's huge.
Implementing it, if you're going around and mechanically closing doors, if you're a large facility, can take some time to get those people out there to get those locked down.
Absolutely, and I assume that that's also completely scalable on however you want it to, and you can set those restrictions however you want to.
Yeah, those you can define the exterior doors or interior doors that you may want to lock down. So there's lots of different options for that.
Okay, yes, let's get to the heart of it. I know you were excited to show people how it actually works. So tell us a little bit about that, how it actually, from a user perspective, it works.
So everything is programmed through the access control software or the management software. So as you can see on the screen, this is kind of a home screen of the system that when we're going in and we're creating our individual users, so we can see the users that are on the system, we can easily apply those users to a group. So you'll see that we have a general employee group, we have a admin or management group, we also have a cleaning group that has been set up, and we would also have our list of doors. And so we would assign which doors that particular group has access to. So it makes it really easy to drag and drop your user. So rather than creating a door schedule list for each user when you add them to the system, we add the user and drop them into a user group, and that user
neat.
group is assigned to a group of doors.
You basically create templates and then you just add the people as you go. That's fantastic. So you could just say, okay, Sally Mae just needs to be moved from the cleaning crew to the maintenance crew, or for the employee to the management employee, and you can just basically take them and drop them in there. Wow,
Exactly.
that's fantastic. That makes it easy like that.
So rather than having to go and recut a new key that has access to additional doors on the system,
And update your million spreadsheets.
yeah, we drop them into the new user group. And we can also do access schedules. So if
that's right here.
those different users need to have access throughout different times, we can do that.
Like the cleaning crew we talked about, that maybe only needs to be let in after hours. And you can even restrict and say, okay, after 9 o'clock, they don't have access anymore, right? To make sure that they're not in the facility when they're not supposed to.
Exactly. There's so many different things that we can go and drill down into in these systems that allow you to have the complete control. So if a user is maybe a temporary contractor that's working in your facility, and we know that they're going to be here for a week, when you're in creating the user, we can tell their credential that it's only valid from this date to this date. Or we can create maybe a system that's a little bit more secure, where they have to present a key or a credential card, plus they have to enter in a PIN number. So they do make different card readers that have a PIN pad. So they present their card plus a code 1, 2, 3, 4 to get into the facility. So
Which, multi-authentication is really big right now in the IT industry with software. So you can do that with your electronic access control with your hardware as well, with access to your facility. Okay, cool. That's fantastic.
Here we have the scheduled cleaning crew, so we can go in and we can define that their card can work between 7 and 10 p.m. and only on Tuesdays and only on Thursdays. If they come outside of that window of opportunity and they try to present their card, they're not going to get into the facility. So the event logs, this really goes into more of the audit trail and letting you see exactly what's happened on the system. So we can see when that user came in, which door they've been through, and we can filter these events by user, by door, by floors. So if you have a group of users and a group of doors on a certain floor of the building that we need to just monitor, we can go in and define all of those credentials when we want to build a report or show an event log.
If you maybe want to keep track of a user, or maybe you did have an incident where you need to figure out, okay, who had access to that? Maybe you had some equipment that's gone or something like that, and you can really narrow down on, okay, who had access to that area during that time.
Yep, and integrating maps allows you to follow that path. You can see exactly where they've gone throughout the facility and where that person might be located.
Neat. Again, in a lockdown situation, that might be really crucial.
Yep.
And that goes back to the reporting that you just mentioned, that you can basically completely customize it by however way you want it, right?
A lot of different reports built into the system, so we can see run user reports. We can run reports on doors, so we can see, what activity is taking place at that particular door. On some of the wireless systems, we can run a battery status report, so we can see if we need to roll out any maintenance crew to change out batteries, different things like that. All of those reports are customizable and exportable to CSV files or to a SQL database to do different things. And we can have those auto-generated on a weekly basis or a daily basis, and have it just emailed directly to a group of users if that's something that you desire to do.
So here's a thought. I'm just thinking as I'm listening to this, one great business application could be that you could actually tie it into your time tracking system, right? And you could, especially when you can export them via CSV, most softwares actually accept CSV imports. So you could actually use this in lieu of a time tracking system, or integrate it with a time tracking system you have to track your employees, when they come, when they go, and the hours they work. Right?
Yeah, a lot of the access control systems today actually either integrate, like you mentioned, to other systems, or have an add-on module that can be used for your time and attendance.
Perfect. Thank you. Perfect.
Custom reports, we kind of talked about a little bit about that, where we can go in and detail and pull out just the information that we're looking for. So there's columns upon columns and columns of information, and we can sort those by alphabetical user lists, or we can see by door or by facility. So there's a lot of different ways that we can pull those reports.
Great. And I assume that your integrator, in this case, we can help users with that and help them, give them some training on how to set it up and talk to them, okay, what's your goal for the system? And let's set it up in a way that makes sense for your business so that they get the full benefits from that, right?
Yes.
Great.
Yep.
Okay. So getting a little bit into the hardware, right? And those are some of the things that we see here.
Yeah, in designing a system, there's lots of different things that we can look at and come into play when we are making a recommendation to the user. So depending on how many doors you're looking for in a system, the building construction or the makeup of the building. So if we're talking block walls and hardened ceilings, we know that running cabling to some of those areas is going to be difficult. So a wireless option might be a good fit.
Okay.
There could be areas where we know we have limited access to space to install a hardwired door controller. These are generally larger metal cabinets that can support multiple doors, and these are all home run back to that control panel. So each of your doors has a bundled cable that runs back to the door controller. And that door controller then has a larger power supply to supply power to your electronic strike, to your card reader, to a door position switch, request to exit buttons or motion detectors.
It's basically the brains of your system, right?
Yeah, this is what's pushing out the power to those and receiving that information coming from the card reader, and making sure that it's matching up with what we have in the software to have access.
So tell me a little bit about the IP controller. I noticed this one, the hardwired one, can control more doors than IP one. So tell me a little bit how you would maybe choose the IP controller, the smaller one over the bigger one.
Well, on our display board, we actually have over there on the left side the door controller. That's an IP door controller that's PoE powered. So rather than having to have a maintenance closet that has a 110 outlet, we can feed right off of a network switch that's maybe already in place in the business. And then the door controller gets mounted above the door or near the door.
So you don't actually have to run each individual door all the way back. You can just run it to this, and this can kind of take care of the doors within the vicinity, the immediate vicinity, and then you just need to run this one back to the...
Yep, and with the door controller, the IP door controllers, those are typically a 1-to-1 relationship, sometimes a 1-to-2 relationship in number of door controllers to doors. So one door controller to one door. If you do have an application that there's, say, like an inventory room that has a door on each side, we can potentially run 2 doors off of one controller. It just depends on the makeup of the building.
Okay, fantastic. And then there's wireless options. I think you mentioned that a little bit. If you have a building that's tough to cable, that might be the way to go.
Yeah, it's starting to become commonplace for the wireless doors to be installed. So if you have a facility that has maybe 1 or 2, 3, 4 exterior doors, but then you have 15 internal doors, running cabling is probably one of the most expensive pieces of installing a system.
It's labor intensive too.
Yes, and so what we can do there is we can come and we can bolt on a new escutcheon to the door, and now this becomes your wireless door to have access. So we present the card to the reader at the door, and it makes the decision via a smart card. So the database of which doors the user has access to is actually stored on the card, and it's the carrier of the information. And when you get to the door, you're creating a two-way communication or writing that audit trail to the card. When the card funnels back through an exterior door, it's updating the database and the software that user has been through there, the battery status.
Oh, wow.
We can also create those to be wireless online. So if we can get a wireless access point close by, we can we can actually push out that lockdown to this wireless online door. We can also apply blacklists. So if an employee's been terminated, we can push that out to the door immediately.
Okay, cool. All right, so these are kind of the different options as far as the door hardware. Let's talk a little bit about, you have the key card here. I see we have a little key fob here. Tell us a little bit about the differences from an end user standpoint, what you can use to get in.
Cards have probably been around the longest. It's probably what most people are familiar with when they go to a hotel and you've been issued a card to get into your room. They kind of get a bad rap because they started out as being mag strip cards.
That's where you still had to put them in, right?
Yeah, sometimes they could be demagnetized and you have issues. They could also be duplicated. But we've moved into having smarter cards, higher level of security or encryption of the information that's on the card. So they're about the size of a credit card. You get them within a couple feet, or a couple inches of the card reader, its proximity. So we get it close. It transfers the information. It's almost instantaneous to unlock the door.
And you can see how the light turned on there whenever Nate got it to make sure that, it worked. Okay, great.
The downside to cards sometimes in certain business situations is the wintertime, you leave them in a pant pocket or a coat pocket from the previous day. The user doesn't have their credential to get in. So key fobs I like because they go on your keychain. If you drove your vehicle to work, you have access to get into the building.
Gotcha.
And one common thing that we do get asked on a regular basis is, can the user have more than one credential? We can set them up to have more than one. So if they need to have a card and a key fob, or two key fobs to go on two sets of keys for vehicles they may drive, we can set that up.
And I assume with the key fob maybe a little bit more with the card. Another benefit of that is they're probably fairly low cost, so that if you do have a facility where people don't return their credentials, it wouldn't be a huge cost to you to replace that. I know, like, for example, gyms that give their subscribers access outside of the times they're open, for example, could use that.
Yeah, $5 to $7 typically for a credential, kind of on the card on the lower end of the spectrum. Key fobs on a little bit on the higher end of that spectrum.
Okay, and I see there's mobile here. Do you want to just real quick tell me, is that a new thing? I don't think I've seen that before.
It's starting to come into play a little bit more in systems. We're starting to see that integrated into designs using the mobile device. And that can either be an app that's using the Bluetooth within your phone. So we can set a range, Bluetooth range of, say, 3 to 5 feet. So that way you're not clear across the parking lot, that it's connecting to the reader and unlocking a door. And NFC, near field communication, is another popular one. That's the downside to it is it's not implemented in every single cell phone that's out there on the market.
Okay.
But there are different ways to put NFC in other devices. So one of our technicians that I work with, he has either a bracelet or a ring that has NFC built into it as a chip. So that's actually his credential that he uses to get in.
So we're getting closer and closer to the Hollywood movies.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
The card readers, those just come in different shapes and form factors to meet your needs. So the reader here is a little bit narrower, so it can be mounted on the frame of a door. We have larger ones that can be mounted to the side of a door to cover a single gang or a double gang box on the facility.
Okay.
And they can be a combination of multiple technologies. So if we need to have proximity and a pin pad integrated, and or have that Bluetooth radio inside the reader, they come in different form factors.
So again, lots of choices and customizable to your business needs. Okay, great. Locks.
Yes, this is a fun one. I kind of relate this a lot to different car manufacturers and all the different makes and models that they have, because there are tons of different doors out there on the market, and some that are really old, some that are newer. And so there's a lot of strikes, latches, and different locking mechanisms that can come into play. So your strikes typically work with cylindrical latch sets that you might be accustomed to on a handled. Latches more for your panic bars, and mag locks for some difficult locking solutions. They do have some drawbacks in that they have to be wired in to fire alarm systems, or have additional devices like a request to exit button or motion detector installed as well.
So if I look at some access control, that seems fairly complex between all the different components, and it seems like there's a lot of options. Would someone like Nex-Tech actually be able to then kind of help me also look at the doors I have, not just from a business perspective, the type of system, but also all the mechanics of, okay, how do I actually make this work, and to make sure I actually get the right hardware? Is that something that you or the technicians walk me through and recommend?
Yeah, we come out and we do a walkthrough. Okay. We'll evaluate the building and see what's going to be the right fit for you. We'll make that design, and we'll come in. We can do a turnkey installation, get everything wired up, set up, and then at the end of the day, it's just a training for the end user on how to add, remove users, and create those different schedules, and makes it really easy for them moving down the road forward.
Cool. Very good. And I see there's just a couple more logs. So thank you, Nate. I really appreciate you coming, and I hope that you learned something today. I certainly did. If you have any more questions, make sure to reach out to us. Our webinar will be posted on our website as usual. And we hope to hear from you and be able to teach you a little bit more about access control. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.